Section 4, 4.1 History of Novel. The 18th century has gifted English literature to entirely new forms which are without any traces in the ancient classical heritage. One of those was the periodical essay and the other was novel. Both of these forms, especially novel, caught the spirit of the 18th century as the age of intellectual, sentimental and realistic play and tried to instruct the readers which would help them to a more purposeful and virtuous life. Since the time of its origin, novel has been gaining popularity and growing gradually. Today, it is recognized as the most dominant literary genre. A novel is a relatively long narrative fiction which describes intimate human experiences, normally in a prose form. The present English word novel is derived from the Italian word novella, meaning new. A novel narrates a story, embellishing it with more details of time, place, nature, people and their minds, their gestures and activities. It creates the picture of the society of that time. Novel makes life easier to understand than in drama and poetry. In modern era, novel has adopted literary prose. The novel as a literary genre has a history of about 2000 years. Among the early precursors of novel, a journal collection of tales known as Greek romances dating from the 2nd to 6th century may top the list. These imaginative and delightful stories of ideal love and marvelous adventures profoundly affected the creative writing for the next 1000 years. Though novel in the modern era usually makes use of a literary prose, the earlier threads of the genre can be found in Virgil's Eclogues or Malory's Morte d'Arthur or Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. Murasaki Shikibu's Tale of Genji, One Not One Not, has been described as the world's first novel. The European novel is often said to begin with Don Quixote by Spanish writer Miguel de Cervantes, which was published in two parts between 1605 and 1615. In the 18th century, the appearance of newspaper and magazines attracted a large number of readers from the middle class. These new readers had little interest in romances and tragedies which were appreciated by the upper class. Thus, need for a new type of literature arose that would express the new ideas of the 18th century. The 18th century new literature was characterized by the spirit of realism and denial of romantic features like enthusiasm, passion and imagination. The foreground for the novel was prepared by all these factors. After 1740, novel originated as the literary form in England. Increase in trade and commerce along with the Industrial Revolution had given rise to the middle class. A class of people had emerged to occupy an elite status. The realistic picture of everyday life and problems of common people depicted in the novels appealed to the newly educated class and was regarded by them as a respectable reading material. The novel as a form appears to have been designed for both to voice the aspirations of the middle and lower classes and meet their longings. The spread of machines could provide a time to the educated middle class for reading and discussions about the books. Drama and poetry were the two literary forms that were fading away. Novel was a combination of some features of them and some new features were added in the form. It was the prominent form in the 18th century and onwards to encompass the social, political and cultural happenings and scientific progress. The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan 1678 and Oronoku by Aphra Behn 1688 initiated the plenteous and colorful tradition of English novel and was followed by Daniel Defoe, Robinson Crusoe, Malfanders and Jonathan Swift Gulliver's Travels, a famous satire. Other major novelists of 18th century are Samuel Richardson, Pamela or Wordsworth Rewarded in Clarissa, both epistolary novels, Henry Fielding, Lawrence Sterney and Tobias Smollett. The tradition was enriched by many other stalwart novelists such as Charles Dickens, Walter Scott, Nathaniel Horace Walpole, Thomas Hardy, Wilkie Collins, and H.G. Wells. The 20th century is marked by the modern topics and innovative styles and techniques and widened angles of the views by the novelists like E.M. Forster James, Joyce Joseph Conrad, Henry James, George Orwell, Graham Greene, D.H. Lawrence, William Golding, and Anthony Burgess. They widened the circumference of the genre by writing political, social, physiological, and other modern issues in their novels. There are immigrant authors like Salman Rushdie, India, V.S. Naipaul, Trinidad, Kazuo Ishiguro, Japan, and many others. The contribution of women novelists to this great pageant cannot be neglected. The novel of Manners, Evelina by Frances Burney, Gothic novels by Anne Radcliffe, a novel based on science of the age, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley are landmark novels. Jane Austen has been ruling over the minds of the people through her novels. Bronte sisters Emily and Charlotte have created their own place by their incomparable works. The Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, Marianne Evan, alias George Eliot wrote the novels reflecting physiological insight. Virginia Woolf is the pioneer of the stream of consciousness technique in English novel. Agatha Christie created her own place by writing many novels based on crime. Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple are the evergreen detectives created by her. Harper Lee, Margaret Atwood, Toni Morrison, and Alice Walker have elevated the tradition further to prosperity. Indian scenario. Rajaram Mohan's Wife by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, serialized in the Indian field, was the first novel in English written by an Indian. The first period after that is marked by few more novels written by the Indian writers. These novels bore either nationalistic virtues or social issues as the main framework. Mulk Raj Anand, R.K. Narayan, and Raja Rao were the major trio who prevailed in the period after that. Novelists like Anita Desai, Nayantara Sahgal, and Arun Joshi and Manmohar Malgaonkar changed the current situation of Indian English novel through their works. Amitav Ghosh, Vikram Seth, and Upamanyu Chatterjee ameliorated the Indian novel in English by adding new features to it. Recent years have witnessed the dazzling performance by Indian novels like Salman Rushdie, Arvind Adiga, Arundhati Roy, Kiran Desai, and Kiran Nagarkar. The tradition of Indian English novel has undergone a vital change since its birth, and it has undoubtedly very bright future. Novella. A novella, the word originated from the Italian word novelle, is a type of prose fiction which is shorter than a full-length novel and longer than short stories. It is a well-structured yet short narrative, often satiric or realistic in tone. It usually focuses on one incident or issue with the other or two main characters and takes place at a single tradition. Some of the famous novellas in English are The Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, The Turn of the Screw by Henry James, Billy Bird by Herman Melville, Death in Venice by Thomas Mann, Seize the Day by Saul Bellow, Pearl by John Steinbeck. Elements of novel or novella. There are 6 elements essential of novel or novella. All these factors may be related to one another in the work by an author. Theme. Theme is the central idea in the novel which can be expressed in a nutshell. It is a philosophical statement or a truth which the writer has put forth through the narration of the series of events in the story and characters acting in a particular setting. Plot. Plot is essentially the story or the course of events that make up the theme. It is created by the conflict either internal inside the mind of the character or external with others, characters or entities. Plot may be simple, one plot, or complex, consisting the interviewing of many subplots. Character. Characterization is related to the plot as the course of events take place because of the certain behavior of the characters. Depiction of character can range from the thumbnail sketch to deep worldy, highly detailed verbal sketch. The important character may have been described in its every aspect by the writer. The minor characters are not given much importance. The reader follows the action of one main character throughout the novel. This character is referred to as the protagonist. Protagonist, main character, is in conflict with the other character or an entity or a force, internal or external, which is known as antagonist. Setting. Setting is the background in which the story takes place. There are several aspects of the setting. It includes place, period, time, climate or weather and lifestyle. Plot and character are the two major elements that are affected due to the setting. Conflict. The struggle between the opposite forces in the story is called the conflict. Conflict in the story provides interest and curiosity about the plot. Language or style. The language and techniques used by the author for the narration of the course of events is known as the style. An author can use extensive vocabulary and high phrases, or he may be laconic and would write only to the point, or he may mix both according to the requirement for meeting his purpose. He may use linguistic devices to make the narrative effective. All these factors decide the texture of the narration and create an impact on the readers. Types of novel. Realistic novel. The realistic novel is a fiction that gives the effect of realism. Sometimes this is also called a novel of manner. It can be characterized by its complex characters with mixed motives that are rooted in the social class. The characters are in the realistic novel interact with each other and characters and undergo plausible and everyday experiences. Picaresque novel. The word picaresque is originated from the Spanish word picaro, which means a rogue. A picaresque novel narrates the adventures of the protagonist, who is an eccentric or disreputable person, in an episodic form. Historical novel. A historical novel is a novel set in a period earlier than that of the writing. Epistolary novel. The word epistolary derives from the Latin word epistola, which means a letter. The epistolary novel is that in which the writer presents the narrative through a series of correspondence or other documents. Although letters are the most common basis for epistolary novel, diary entries are also a popular form of this type. Gothic novel. The novels that include terror, mystery, horror, thriller, supernatural doom, death or decay or haunted buildings are called the Gothic novels. Autobiographical novel. The autobiographical novel is the novel based on the life of the author. However, the author changes the places and names of the characters, or even may change or avoid certain details of his life. It may or may not be in the first person narration. Allegorical novel. An allegory is a story that bears more than one level of meaning. The surface meaning of such novel is different from the symbolic meaning of it. The symbolic meaning of an allegory may be political, religious, historical or philosophical. Utopian or dystopian novel. Utopia is an imaginary concept of community or society possessing the ideal qualities. It is a common literary theme, especially in science fiction or speculative fiction. Physiological novel. Physiological novel is the work of fiction that treats the internal life of the protagonist or even the other characters as much as the external factors. Stream of consciousness novel. Stream of consciousness is a phrase coined by William James in his treatise Principles of Physiology 1890. It means the flow of the thoughts. Incidents in the plot are in the sequence of other occurrences. The novelist narrates them as they enter the mind of the character. Bildungsroman's novel. The German word Bildungsroman indicates growth. The fictional biography or autobiography is concerned with the growth of the protagonist's mind, spirit and characters from the childhood to adulthood. In the first half of the 20th century, a cult of pulp magazines became popular, in which fantastic fiction for the general entertainment of the masses was printed on the cheap pulp paper. The pulp fiction era provided a building ground for the detective novels and science fiction. Science fiction is a genre of speculative fiction dealing with imaginative concepts such as futuristic setting, futuristic science and technology, space travel, time travel, parallel universes and extraterrestrial life. Science fiction often explores the potential consequences of scientific and other innovations. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, 1823, is considered the first novel based on science and technology. The genre flourished in the second half of the 19th century. Detective fiction is a subgenre of crime fiction and mystery fiction in which an investigator or a detective, either professional or amateur, investigates a crime, often a murder. Thank you.